Welcome to Dr. Balga's podcast for the Curious Doc. Today is May 22nd, 2026. This videocast is on a Science magazine review article titled The Oscillatory Biology of Sleep Linkage to Dementia, published yesterday, 21st May 2026. What is the central thesis in this review? Sleep organizes neuromodulators into synchronized infraslow oscillations that coordinate neural activity, vascular dynamics, CSF, cerebrospinal fluid transport, and glymphatic clearance. Which neuromodulators oscillate during sleep? Norepinephrine, acetylcholine, serotonin, dopamine, and to a lesser extent histamine oscillate in coordinated cycles during non-rapid eye movement sleep or NREM sleep. What is the periodicity of these oscillations? These oscillations recur approximately every 50 to 135 seconds, with periodicity influenced by body temperature across species. Why is sleep considered evolutionarily important? Sleep is a highly conserved across species despite survival risks, implying a fundamental biological function essential for brain and systemic physiology. How has understanding of sleep evolved? Sleep was initially viewed as a restorative rest, but is now recognized as a systems level process integrating neural, vascular, immune, endocrine, and metabolic regulation. Sleep rhythms. What are microarousals? Microarousals are brief elevations in arousal marked by transient bursts of fast electroencephalographic activity without full awakening. How are electroencephalographic rhythms linked to sleep? The fast beta band activity between 10 to 30 Hz recurs rhythmically during sleep and synchronizes with systemic physiological processes. Which physiological systems oscillate with sleep rhythms? Heart rate, pupil diameter, respiration, vascular volume, and muscle tone fluctuate synchronously with sleep oscillations. What's unique about neuromodulator activity during wakefulness? During wakefulness, neuromodulators largely operate independently through specialized circuits controlling behavior and cognition. What changes occur during non-rapid eye movement sleep? Neuromodulators become temporally aligned with a unified brain rhythm that coordinates sleep physiology. Neuromodulator synchrony. How were synchronized neuromodulator oscillations detected? Studies use genetically encoded neuromodulator biosensors combined with fiber photometry in free behaving mice. Why are these important? Why are these recordings important? They permit minimally stressed real-time measurements of transient neuromodulator fluctuations over prolonged periods. What cellular signals oscillate with neuromodulators? Intracellular calcium and cyclic adenosine monophosphate, cyclic AMP signaling in hippocampal neurons follow similar infraslow rhythms. What happens when these oscillations are disrupted experimentally? Disruption impairs memory formation and interferes with synaptic plasticity during sleep. What remains uncertain about these oscillations? The mechanisms coordinating synchronized neuromodulator oscillations and their evolution across aging and disease remain incompletely defined. Sleep architecture. What are sleep spindles? Sleep spindles are brief bursts of 10 to 15 Hz of electrical activity lasting approximately 0.5 to 3 seconds during sleep. Why are sleep spindles clinically relevant? Spindle density is among the strongest electroencephalographic predictors of post-sleep memory performance. How does norepinephrine influence spindles? Norepinephrine oscillations gate spindle activity by regulating the timing and amplitude of cortical excitability. What occurs if norepinephrine oscillations are excessive? Excessive frequent oscillations prevent the decline in norepinephrine necessary for normal spindle expression. Why is precise oscillatory tuning important? Proper neuromodulator timing coordinates sleep microarchitecture and supports memory consolidation. Vascular dynamics. Why are neuromodulators considered vasoactive agents? Neuromodulators directly influence vascular constriction and dilatation across cerebral vessels. Which neuromodulators mainly constrict blood vessels? Norepinephrine and serotonin primarily act as vasoconstrictors. Which neuromodulators mainly dilate blood vessels? Acetylcholine and dopamine are generally associated with vasodilatation. What is slow vasomotion? Slow vasomotion refers to rhythmic constriction and dilatation of cerebral vessels during sleep and quiet wakefulness. Why is slow vasomotion biologically important? It generates the mechanical force required to propel CSF through perivascular spaces. What is the glymphatic system? The glymphatic system is a brain-wide fluid transport pathology supporting CSF influx and a metabolic waste clearance. How does CSF fluid enter the brain? CSF fluid travels along perivascular spaces surrounding cerebral vessels. Why are perivascular spaces important? They provide low resistance conduits enabling CSF to penetrate deep brain regions. How does sleep affect glymphatic activity? Glymphatic transport is highly active during sleep and suppressed during wakefulness. Which proteins are cleared through glymphatic transport? Beta amyloid and tau are among the neurotoxic proteins cleared through glymphatic mechanisms. Astrocytes and flow. How do astrocytes influence glymphatic transport? Astrocytic end feet help direct CSF movement into neuropil and limit retrograde flow. What happens to astrocytes during sleep? Astrocytic processes shrink non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement sleep. Why does extravascular space expand during sleep? Reduced astrocytic volume enlarges extracellular space and lowers resistance to fluid movement. How does sleep deprivation affect clearance biomarkers? Sleep deprivation reduces glymphatic clearance and alters morning plasma amyloid-β and tau levels. What happens when norepinephrine tone remains elevated? Persistent norepinephrine elevation promotes desynchronized low amplitude oscillations and suppresses glymphatic flow. Disease and dementia. How may psychiatric disorders increase dementia risk? Disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression disrupts neuromodulator signaling and sleep architecture. How does chronic stress influence sleep rhythms? Chronic stress alters sympathetic dynamics and interferes with slow vasomotion during sleep. Why is locus ceruleus important in aging? Locus ceruleus neurons degenerate early with aging, impairing norepinephrine signaling and sleep architecture. Why are sleep disturbances important in neurodegenerative disease? Sleep abnormalities often precede classical symptoms by years or decades, suggesting an early pathogenic role. What common mechanism may link many disorders to dementia? Breakdown of sleep-dependent neuromodulator rhythms may impair glymphatic clearance and promote toxic protein accumulation. Medications and biomarkers. How might medications alter dementia risk? Many drugs modify neuromodulator signaling and may disrupt sleep-associated oscillations and glymphatic clearance. Which medication reduced glymphatic clearance in mice? Zolpidem suppressed norepinephrine oscillations and reduced lymphatic clearance by approximately 30%. How do beta blockers differ biologically? Their ability to cross the blood-brain barrier may influence Alzheimer's disease risk differently. Why is heart rate variability relevant? HRV, or heart rate variability, reflects locus ceruleus-driven autonomic dynamics linked to sleep modulation. How could heart rate variability become clinically useful? Longitudinal assessment may help identify individuals at elevated risk for dementia and monitor treatment response. Conclusions. What major conceptual advance does this review propose? Sleep is framed as a coordinated neuromodulatory rhythm integrating neural activity, vascular motion, and brain clearance. What is the proposed consequence of disrupted oscillations? Disrupted oscillations may impair vascular pumping and glymphatic transport, increasing neurodegenerative vulnerability. Which conditions may impair these rhythms? Aging, psychiatric illness, cardiovascular disease, chronic stress, medications, and substance use may disrupt oscillatory signaling. Why are neuromodulator oscillations therapeutic targets? Restoring physiologic oscillatory patterns could preserve brain homeostasis and delay neurodegeneration. What overarching message emerges from this article? The biology of sleep may fundamentally depend on synchronized oscillatory signaling that maintains brain health. This is a fantastic review. Log into Science and read it. It's exciting stuff. This is an infographic of this article. Hit pause and read at your leisure. Podcast brought to you by masterbedfacts.com. This podcast is for physicians and healthcare providers. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and forward to your friends.